In this lecture, I'd like to talk about politics. I know everybody hates politics and gets sick of it, especially in an election year like we're in right now. But there's several things I think we should think about, especially as Christians, and then a little bit of the minutia of how a campaign works, how the parties work in Indiana, so a little bit of minutia. All right, first, personal involvement in politics. You being involved in politics. And the first point I'd like to make is it's not wrong. It's not dirty or low to be involved in politics. We often look at folks that are involved with campaigns and running for office and helping people run for office and kind of blow them off. Treat them like somehow they're second-class citizens and doing something kind of shady. That really, there are shady elements involved in politics, but that's not the right Christian view for a Christian especially. We have a responsibility. We're citizens of our country. The people that we elect, the Bible, or the people that are elected, the Bible tells us we have to obey them. It's in our interest, if nothing else, to try to get the right people in office because we're going to have to obey them. So it's not wrong, it's not dirty or anything like that to be involved in politics. There should be some balance there. It's not the only thing in our life, but it's not wrong. In that same vein of thought, I really don't think it's wrong for a Christian to hold office. And if you think about the restrictions, especially if you get elected to the Indiana state legislature, and for 2.5 or on some years 4 or 5 months, you have to be in Indy for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and you come home for 3 or 4 days, and back and forth. Think how that would disrupt things. Think how that would disrupt your ministry. If you're running a bus or trying to be a Sunday school teacher, think how it would get in the way. And it's not necessarily wrong. I do think it's something you should take very seriously. Lots of people jump into it, and they're really not concerned about serving God. This is just something fun and exciting, and they get sucked into that side of it. But it wouldn't be wrong. You should talk to your pastor about it, I think. It'd be something to enter very, very prayerfully. And it should be something that you know is God's will. Just like anything else in your life, you want to follow God's will into this. Another way to think about it is if we do take the position that it's wrong for Christians to hold office, who are we leaving? We're leaving the unsaved. We're leaving non-Christians to hold office. And then we can't be surprised when they don't understand our point of view and begin to strip away the rights and the Constitution and the freedoms we have that only really exist in a Christian framework. That's it. Outside that, they don't exist. So if we think it's wrong for Christians to get involved, then we are abandoning this whole realm to the unsaved, and that isn't a good position to take. So it's not wrong, all right? It does sometimes have a bad flavor to it, but not wrong. All right, second thing here about beginning with yourself, it's not wrong, and then you should go into it with a mindset of prolonged involvement. All right, I got married, and I wasn't thinking, I'm going to try this for a couple years, and then I'm done with it. No, this is a lifelong commitment. I had children, and that changes your life significantly. And it's a commitment, all right? I didn't train and discipline them for, from 2 to 3 and then wash my hands of it. No, I'm there. I'm going to keep at it. Prolonged involvement. And we should have the same mindset with politics. We might get all ramped up and excited about a particular candidate and jump in and help him. And then we should just keep helping. There'll be another candidate. There'll be another issue. There'll be legislatures we should call and talk to. It should be part of our life. Much like as Christians involved in a church, we make soul winning part of our life. We make visiting folks and inviting them to church part of our life. We make, for many of us, preparing for a ministry on Sundays, learning a lesson, getting a game together or something. It's part of our life. We should have that mindset here with government. It's not our whole life, but we should think about this as I'm going to be involved for life. I'm going to try to influence people. I'm going to vote. I'm going to try to get the right people in office. Prolonged involvement. Okay, so the mindset of a prolonged involvement. Third thing about beginning with yourself is you need to be educated about what's going on. You need to be aware. If you're going to become an engineer, you've got to learn something. You've got to know what it actually means. And to be involved in politics, you should be educated. All right. There's, especially today with the internet, all kinds of places to go. I get an email from the Heritage Foundation. They have a daily update, sometimes a couple different emails from different places, different parts of that institution. And there's usually 3 or 4 articles there talking about something going on. It's mostly national issues. All right, you can get similar information on a state and local level as well. Something to think about, at least with this trying to be aware of what's going on, is to be part of a political party. If there's a party that you can stomach, and today it's getting harder to stomach either party, but especially the local party, the county party and those folks, if you can stomach them and you can get them to take positions that don't run directly contrary to the Bible, there's a lot of benefits to being part of a party, or at least somewhat associated with a party. They will have people at the State House keeping you aware of what's going on. You don't have to create your own framework and structure to funnel information to you. The party will do a lot of that as issues come up that are significant. They will spread the word. So be aware. Parties is a good way. Other institutions. In Indiana, we have Advance America, which is an organization that is a watchdog on the state legislature. And they work with churches very extensively, looking for issues that are going to affect churches primarily. And they keep us aware. You want to be aware of what's going on. So be educated. All right, a fourth thing to think about with being personally involved is start at the local level. I mean, it's easy to think just about the president. But there's the town board, right? There's a county commissioner, there's a sheriff. There are some of these local races. And especially if you're going to be trying to be actively involved, passing things out, that's a very good place to kind of get your feet wet. You're talking about a much smaller area of operation. You can get your feet wet. And then definitely, it's work in bigger campaigns, be involved. Find somebody you can be behind. Starting at the local level, though, it gives you a chance on a small scale to see how things operate and kind of work your way up. All right, the last thing to talk about here with beginning with yourself. We had it's not wrong. We have the mindset of prolonged involvement. We have be educated. We have think about starting at the local level. And the last thing is ways for you to influence your government. What are some things you can do to have an influence? Okay, and I just listed 4 things here, and I'm sure we can come up with others, but at least 4 things to get us thinking. All right. One way is to work to elect the right people, get the right person in office. This in lots of ways, in lots of real practical ways, is the strongest voice we have. Getting the right person into office. Once somebody's in office, they're pretty much there. All right. We can seek to replace them at the end of their term. But they're in office. Right? There's a few exceptions where they can get thrown out and things like that. But for the most part, they're there. And we can try to influence them, but they're in position. Working to get the right people elected. Right? You can personally vote. You can personally talk to other people. You can help a candidate. If you've ever gotten a phone call from a candidate or seen a piece of paper stuck in the door about voting for a candidate, somebody did that, right? And you could be that somebody. It takes lots of work on the ground, right? Give some money, all right? Those pamphlets take money. We often complain, especially in our circles, about the liberals having all this money. Well, they didn't print it. Well, maybe they did, but they didn't print it. People gave it. All right? A lot of the money is sucked out of people's pockets through union dues, and the union gives it to them. But it came from people. All right? We can give money, and I think we should, as much as, to different levels of ability. So work to get the right people elected. That is really our strongest voice, getting the right people into office. Beyond that, some things you can do. Communicate with elected representatives. You can write them letters. Write one out by hand and mail it to them. They won't know what to do with it. You can send them an email. You can call them. It's often extremely aggravated, and you'll get their secretary or their legislative assistant, and they'll take a message for you. But you can talk to them. They are people, and they can be influenced. All right? The other side is going to call and influence them. Right now in Indiana, with this gender identity stuff, the queers and the cross-dressers and the boys that say they're goers, they're calling. They're showing up in Indianapolis. We can. Call them. Show up at meetings. Go to Indianapolis if you're in Indiana and show up at the guy's office. You could call ahead of time, make an appointment, or just show up. Say, hey, I voted for you. What are you doing? That gets their attention. They're people, they can be influenced by us. It does take time to establish those channels of communication. You call the first time, you're just Joe Schmo that, he doesn't, you live in his district, that's all he knows. But you call and talk to him, you send a letter. Next time there's a campaign, if he's the guy you want into office, you show him, you give some money, you show him you're out working to get him elected, you get a track record, then you call. And he knows, oh, this isn't just some crazy guy. He helped me get elected. Maybe I should listen. So it sometimes takes some time to establish those channels of communication, but it's worth it. All right? The other side is going to do that. We should seek to do that as well. So communicate. It's never convenient. All right? Never convenient, but we should do it. Much like it's not ever convenient to go canvassing. Every time I want to go canvassing, my foot hurts and I'm tired and whatever. I don't feel like it, but I've got to go and do it. We should communicate. A third thing you can do to influence those around you influence government is to educate those around you. All right? Keep them informed. All right? You can talk to people at work about just what exactly this gender identity stuff means. It says, do you really want a teenage boy in your daughter's locker room? And if she complains, she's the one that gets in trouble? Is that what you really want? Or gay marriage. You can talk about it. Or abortion. Talk about it. You can influence people around you. Now, if you're at work and getting paid, don't get fired. But you can influence. The Heritage Foundation that I referenced earlier, I give them money. And one of the few places I give money to, that type of organization. And part of it is this very reason. They work extensively to educate people. They have people on their staff who research laws that are being passed and look at how those laws are affected, and they put together reports and write articles and essays about how these laws are affecting people. Obamacare, they've done extensive work tracking how it's caused prices to go up and caused the different options for insurance to disappear. They package that information and provide it to people. It makes it easy for people to be educated if they're willing to read it. So educate those around you. And then the last way you can personally influence them, at least in my list here, is run for office. You're mad at how the dog catcher handles the dogs in town? Be the dog catcher. You can fix it. You don't like the county sheriff? You think he's a crook? Go be the county sheriff. All right? You can be elected. My wife sometimes will complain about something. She says, oh, I can't believe they did that, someone on staff. And sometimes I'll say, well, they'll let you do it if you want. And usually at that point, it's not that big a deal. I say, well, they'll fix it. We should be willing at least to run for office and take those positions if needed. So, all right, so begin with yourself as you're getting involved with politics. Don't make it just something where you point at everybody else and say, if they did that or they did this, or no, I have a responsibility here. I'm going to do what I should be doing. All right, the second point with involvement in politics is how much should a pastor be involved, a pastor of a church? What's the balance he should get there? And obviously, a pastor should seek and pray and talk to God about this and get direction. But just hear us thinking, what should be the balance? So there's two things to think about here, really. One is legally. What can the pastor do or not do? He doesn't want to get arrested for doing something. And then the other is biblically. Scripturally, where's the pastor's responsibility lie first? All right, and we can think about that. So first of all, legally, all right, as an individual person, the pastor of a church can do anything anyone else can do. He can pass out flyers for a particular candidate. He can give money for a particular candidate. He can go knock on doors for a particular candidate. So as an individual, he can do anything that anyone else can do. But whenever he is acting as the pastor of the church or using church equipment and church money or church vehicles, there are some things to think about. He's not allowed to use those things for any partisan type activity. And there's some gray area here. But the church officially, legally, shouldn't take the church vans and the church printers and be printing flyers for a particular candidate and then transporting people in the vans to go pass those things out. All right, should stop shy of that. If we're passing out pamphlets just talking about, how we're against abortion, that would be fine. But if we're narrowing down and picking a particular candidate, say we're voting for this guy, that's where you got to be a little bit careful. The only reason it's an issue for a pastor is the tax status. A church is tax exempt from paying taxes. And that can be brought into question if the church becomes just a partisan entity and all it really does is involve itself in politics. You might be thinking, of course, that would never happen. No. Think of the liberals. They're always the bad guys. Think of how many churches would pop up if they could operate tax-free. And all they did was they had some token service on Sunday, and then all the other activity was getting Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders elected. All right, so there's some common sense there about, for a church, and we are tax exempt as a religious organization, we need to make sure we're doing religious activities. So legally, the pastor's got to be a little bit careful and not come out, he's got to stop short of saying, I think as members of our church, we should vote for this person. Or I think as members of this church, we should vote for that person. Or taking the church money and equipment and resources and using them for a particular person. Other things, perfectly legal and fine. It's fine for the church to send people to Indianapolis to talk to our state legislatures. That's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine to voice our opinion and put up billboards that were against gay marriage. Perfectly fine. All right, but in the next campaign, to by name pick another candidate, that's where we run into that legal question. Probably, unless you're really, really outrageous with it, nothing would happen, but you do risk losing that tax-exempt status. So legally, the pastor's got to think a little bit and stop shy of that direct endorsement of a particular candidate. All right, the other side of the pastor's involvement is biblically, thinking of the Bible and God. How much should the pastor be involved? First thing to think about is that the church is his first job. I mean, he is the pastor of the church. That's his primary responsibility. All right. But it's not wrong for him to get involved in politics. In fact, you could think of, and it's proper to think this way, that the church and the pastor being involved some in politics helps protect the church. Us getting involved in trying to stop gay marriage being forced down our throat, I mean, we'd have to close our church down. It would do damage to our church. And if we can be involved enough to fend that thing off, then it's perfectly legitimate. So the church is his primary responsibility. He should be here to preach, be concerned about the church. It should be his first love. But it's not wrong for him to be involved. In a similar fashion, that is just members of the church. We can be involved in politics. But if that becomes our whole life, then we're way, way out of balance. So the pastor's job is the church primarily, but it's not wrong or inappropriate for him to be involved in politics at all. All right, the last thing here with personal involvement in politics is just a little slice of how Indiana operates. Whatever state you end up in, it's going to be different. Just want to give you this mostly as an example so you're kind of aware of at least how it happens in one place, and you might be bump into something similar someplace else. In Indiana, kind of the bottom of the rung here, if we're thinking about the Republican Party and the Democratic Party and whatever party you want to think about, the bottom rung, the very smallest entity that's part of that party is called a Precinct Committeeman. All right, a precinct is a small little voting block. Everybody in a precinct votes at one place. All right, on election day, everybody in Westchester 2, where I live, goes to vote at one particular place. It's my precinct. And the Republican Party has a precinct committeeman who's the Republican Party representative, so to speak, in that particular precinct. Now, this position has almost no perks or anything. It's a very, very minuscule position, doesn't take a lot of time. But it is the bottom rung. Now, I'm saying it kind of tongue-in-cheek. There's no responsibilities. There are some legitimate things that this precinct committeeman can do. One thing is he can, the party expects him to help register people to vote, getting people to fill out the forms and sending them in, encouraging people to register to vote for their particular party. And then, probably more significant than that, really anybody can do that. This precinct committeeman gets to vote for the leadership of the party. All right, so in Porter County, all the precinct committeemen get together and pick who the party chairman is going to be for the county. All right, so in that position, you're able to have an influence on the party. We talked before about if there's a party that you can stomach and be part of, it's good to do that because you already have that structure in place. Well, here's a way that you can try to influence the party to be what you're willing to be part of. You get to pick the precinct, you get to pick the county chairman, at least be one of the people that does that. All right, so but that's the very bottom of the rung. There's other than that, they're involved on election day, and the precinct committeeman can come into the precinct during voting times and check with the workers and make sure nothing's going wrong. So there's some things like that, but not a major position. So that's the very bottom of the rung. All right, then the second thing here with Indiana, at least, kind of already alluded to this, is that these precinct committeemen get to elect the county officers. There's a county chairman, a vice chairman, a secretary, and a treasurer in all the counties in Indiana. And we're not going to go through the whole spectrum, but those officers assist in the process of choosing the Republican chairman for the state of Indiana. So we have kind of a balancing up the food chain here, and the bigger positions helping choose the position for the state of Indiana. All right, but the precinct is the bottom of the line there as far as the party structure is concerned. So one other thing here with how Indiana is organized just a little bit is a state convention. All right, lots of positions. The candidate for the Republican Party or the Democratic Party is filled in an election. The members of the party will go and vote on election day, and they'll pick the guy they want to be the Republican candidate for governor, or the Republican candidate for county councilman, or the city council, whatever. They'll go and pick. There's a few positions in Indiana that are chosen at a convention, and what that basically is a whole bunch of people from the Republican Party from all over the state going, in our case, to Indianapolis and having a big meeting. And just the people at that meeting, there's usually several thousand, just the people at that meeting get to fill a few spots. Now, these are the candidates for the party. They're not picking these, but they're the candidates for the party. In Indiana, it's the Secretary of State, the auditor, the treasurer, and the clerk of the state courts. These are filled at a state convention, where only the people there get to vote. The people, we talked about people from all over the state going there. These people all get chosen by precinct. Each precinct can send somebody down there and partake in this convention. So I went to one once. It wasn't especially exciting. We got to vote a couple times for those positions. But I was one of a few thousand people that assisted to pick the candidates for that particular year. That gives you a way to influence it. All right, all of that was part of personal involvement, you being involved, ways to think about it, some practical ways to get it done, and some things to be careful with. The other thing I'd like to mention here briefly is a political campaign. The first thing I like to say is if you ever really run for office or are helping somebody run for office, do much, much more than look up these notes. Get some real help, all right? Running a campaign, especially if it's for anything significant. I mean, if you want to be the dog catcher of Chesterton, you might not have to do this. But if you're going to do anything significant, you're going to want some serious help. There's lots of resources to do that. The political party, if it's of the sort in your area that you can work with, a lot of this is already there. The structure is there, and they'll help you with it. But even outside that, you can get some serious help. So let me give you down here a list of things that you'll need if you're going to help run and organize a political campaign and be successful with it. The first thing is you need a good candidate. That might be obvious. A good candidate, which means things like this. Nothing hidden in his past, no skeletons in the closet, nothing that the other side is going to look into and surprise you with halfway into the campaign. Several years ago under Bush, they tried to pull some things out of his past. I think it was CBS, one of the major networks, actually got a hold of some documents that were frauds, and they ran stories about these documents of trying to malign Bush. It came out that they were frauds, but if those had been real, all right, you don't want to be surprised with that. And if somebody really does have something in his past that you're a little bit scary about, don't just cross your fingers and think, surely nobody will find out. Unless the other side are completely pathetic, they're going to find out. So nothing hidden in the past. The candidate should legally be qualified for the office. If there's an age requirement, if there's a degree that's required or some level of training or experience, legally qualified for the office. And then also just qualified. I mean, we've all met people that have a degree that have no idea what they're doing. All right, you don't want that to be your candidate. All right, so a good candidate, all right, and that's not always easy to find. All right, second thing you want to make sure you have is a good organization. All right, there's a political campaign is a tough thing. I feel bad for guys that try to organize and run them. The phrase herding cats always comes to mind because you got, for the most part, volunteers who are coming out to help, and you're trying to give them jobs to do, and there's really nothing that makes them do it, and they might half do it or never really finish, and it's just a constant nightmare trying to organize this thing. But a good organization, just a couple of thoughts. One is it's good to have an overriding theme. We're here to rebuild America, return, rescue Porter County, or some slogan type things that you can slap into billboards and other places, and that becomes kind of the identifying phrase for your candidate. You need to have some people that can manage the campaign. All right. Again, if this is anything at all, if it's something beyond dog catcher, the candidate's going to be busy doing speeches, maybe working during the day and speaking at night or going to campaign events. He won't really have the time to manage all the details and show up and be awake. All right, so you want to have some other people that take care of all of those details. And then something else you want to have with this organization is a good database, all right, or some sort of software to keep track of this, so that you can tell people, hey, we want to use you. Send us an email or go here and sign up to help us, or have cards, fill this card out. And you got to do something with it. I mean, if you have this stack of cards of people that want to volunteer, you don't want to just have it sitting there and every time something comes up, you shuffle through the whole stack. Oh, this guy wanted to do that. You want to have something in place to organize that thing. Again, herding cats is the phrase that comes along with that. Not an easy thing. But you want to have a good organization. If you hear about campaigns that currently with Iowa, there's some of the campaigns, they'll say, oh, they got a good campaign organization in Iowa. What they mean is they've got a good system where they have people all over the state that are making sure people get out to vote. They've got lots of volunteers, and the whole structure is there to make this campaign go smoothly. That's not easy to do at all. So you need to have a good organization. Again, the larger the campaign, the more that's involved with that. All right, a couple other things to mention here with political campaign. You need to have money. All right, it takes money. And it's not wrong that it takes money. Right? It's actually, I think, only if a guy's running for office and he can't get people to give him money, do we really want him running the government? I mean, that's if gathering money, getting people to volunteer and give him money, which should be an easier, less demanding task than running the county or something. So anyway, sufficient funding. You got to have money. All right, this is something that you have to do on your own, collecting money. And if you're part of a political party, often they will kick in some money. They often look at the races around the state and funnel the money to the places that need it most. If your candidate's most likely going to win or most likely going to lose, you might not get a whole lot of money from the state because they're going to put it in places where that money can help tip the balance. But the party can also help with that. At the very least, the party will be sending out mailers and have billboards and other things and have other candidates on there. And your candidate can get listed with these kind of general advertisements. All right, so need money. The next one I kind of already hit upon with money is need if it works out, support of a political party. Right? We talked about that organization and that framework. A lot of that you inherit with a political party. You don't have to build that from the ground up. It's already there. And then the last thing to think about with a campaign is having other bases of support, getting newspapers to endorse your candidate, or prominent businessmen, or people that have been in that position before to endorse your candidate. So other endorsements like that, if you pay attention through the election season, you'll hear different people coming out endorsing certain candidates or certain newspapers endorsing them. Those things to certain people are influential. Oh, that person likes him. I'll think about it. It is influential. If you think of somebody you respect coming out and saying, this is the guy I think we should vote for, it gets your attention. It leans you to support him. So other bases of support like that is a very useful thing. So basically, political campaigns, they're very complicated, difficult thing to organize. And if you ever get involved with one, get some more help. But this gives an idea of the types of things that are involved there and give you some appreciation when you see a piece of mail show up in your mailbox from a political campaign, or an email more today from a campaign worker, all the structure that's involved to get that to you. How did they get your email address? How did they get how did they get all this stuff? There's a whole organization involved behind that, and gives you at least a little appreciation for what is there. So, all right, today we've talked about political campaigns, and before that, personal involvement in politics. Really something as Christians we should be involved. It should not be our life for most of us, but we should be involved, much like we're involved in our church and we're involved in our family. The church is something the state, the government is something that God has given us, and has given us a responsibility to fulfill in it. So, thank you very much.